Great, so good morning and a very warm welcome again to Buddhistisches Tour, especially if it's your first time here, extra warm welcome to you. So those of you that are in the WhatsApp group or that come here fairly regularly will know that next Sunday we'll be celebrating what's traditionally called Wesak, which gets translated as Buddha Day. It's basically a celebration of the Buddha. Yeah, his attainment of enlightenment. And we'll be celebrating that next Sunday. There's a festival day, which you're all very welcome to join. So I thought in preparation for that, I'd have a look at the Buddha's, at the Buddha, basically, following the Buddha, especially after his enlightenment. I always find, I've done a fair amount of talks, and I always find it slightly unsatisfactory trying to describe the Buddha, because it's impossible. Yeah, we have an image of the Buddha, we have some kind of idea, but we really have zero idea what a Buddha is. Yeah, and we've probably got less idea of what a Buddha is if we think we know what a Buddha is, if you know what I mean. We're like, oh yeah, it's kind of you kind of have an idea and then you just switch off. You've got the Buddha as something compartmentalized in your mind, as something you understand and you're interested in or not interested in. The truth is we have no idea what a Buddha is really. So I'm not going to talk about the Buddha in that way. There's all sorts of epitaphs or titles for the Buddha, the conqueror, enlightened, he was liberated, all these things. But I don't know if they help us so much. So today I kind of wanted to look a bit more at the Buddha's teaching, yeah? Because I guess the more you practice, or the more you engage with his actual teachings, the more likely it is that you'll have any sort of sense of what you're moving towards, i.e. what a Buddha is, yeah? And the Buddha said himself, those who see me see the Dharma is Buddhism, is the teachings, yeah? Those who see me see the Dharma, those who see the Dharma see me, yeah? So I thought we'd look at the initial teachings of the Buddha, something to do with the Eightfold Path. We don't have time to go into all of that fully, but I want to talk a little bit about the Eightfold Path. But before we get to that, because the Eightfold Path was taught to his friends, yeah, or people that he used to be with, he attained enlightenment, and then he thought, don't worry, I'll backtrack in a minute. But then he went to go and teach his friends, yeah? But before that happens, loads of other stuff happens as well, which is, the context is always important, I think. I think that's what you discover in Buddhism, isn't it? The context to the actual teachings are almost just as important as the teaching itself. And in a way, it's a bit like you have to learn how to read the context, and then the teachings start to make more sense as well. Yeah, so for those of you that are in the WhatsApp group, I posted a picture. I didn't write anything underneath it, but I posted a picture in the WhatsApp group. It's an image that was drawn by Arloka, and it's basically an image which describes the Buddha's decision to teach. Yeah. So in this image it's a really beautiful image actually, but you have a river, and you have the Buddha looking like he's meditating against a tree. And in the river or the water, it looks like there's loads of lotuses. Yeah, some are coming out of the water, some are underneath. And then above that river, there's a kind of it almost looks like a thought bubble. It's a little bit cartoonish somehow, but not. It could be either it's the Buddha's thought, or it's something coming to the Buddha. And in this bubble is a kind of figure, like an angelic-looking figure, some kind of radiant being, yeah? So I love this image. I have it on my shrine. And this image basically communicates where the Buddha decides to teach. It's a symbol of compassion, yeah? So the story goes, I'll read the beginning of this image, yeah? So the Buddha's there, and he has this kind of thought, and he says, What I've discovered with difficulty, there's no point in making it known. For those overcome by sensual desire and ill will, this truth is hard to understand. Those who are excited by sensual desire, obstructed by a mass of darkness, won't see what goes against the stream, what is subtle, refined, profound, and hard to see. Yeah. So in a way, we're dealing with a story. It's a story. It's a myth, but it communicates something. Yeah. So this is the Buddha's thinking. The Buddha's discovered this enlightenment, this awakening, which again I'm not going to get into with all sorts of clever head trips and da-da-da-da-da. But in a way, I just like to emphasize. Sometimes we emphasize how close the Buddha is and how it springs out of our own experience, which is true. But for today, for some reason, I just like to emphasize the Buddha's otherness. Yeah. It's a bit difficult sometimes for people that are maybe of a theistic background, or even atheistic background, to understand why Buddhists revere the Buddha. Yeah. They think, well, he's not a god. That's strange. So why would you revere some bloke who's just nice? Yeah, like someone said, goes around being nice to animals, for example. It's like, why are you going to dedicate yourself to this? Or they misunderstand Buddhahood. Yeah, but I just wanted to emphasize the otherness, which relates to what we'll get into. We all have these experiences sometimes where we're not on our usual level of experience. Something happens to us. It could be a collapse in our own life, or it could be an opening to another kind of level of reality. And all of a sudden, all of this is put in a completely different context, and it feels quite other. So I just want to emphasize that. So a Buddha lives in that, you might say, yeah? And it's so, what he's discovered is so, I think he's almost surprised at one point. It's unusual, but he's free. And he thinks, why would I trouble myself trying to teach people this? Because people are just not going to get it. Yeah, we're so obsessed and locked in our stuff, aren't we? Yeah, it's very difficult to breathe almost sometimes. We're in our thing. It's very difficult. But then what happens is this, according to the myth, this god turns up, Brahma Sahampati, who's like the highest of the gods. Interestingly, he's kind of one of the highest gods, but he's not higher than the Buddha. So again, that's kind of strange for us, isn't it? You've got this kind of high god, but he's not higher than the Buddha. So the Brahma Sahampati is a bit worried. He thinks, oh dear, the Buddha's not going to teach. And so he implores the Buddha to teach, basically saying, there are people that have little dust in their eyes. Yeah? Some people have lots of dust in their eyes, some people have little dust in their eyes, and for those that have little dust in their eyes, please teach. Yeah? And then the Buddha doesn't think about it. I'm not going to add any dramatic effect. But the Buddha has a vision, yeah? So in this image, again, you have the Buddha, you have Brahma Sahampati, you have this beautiful pond, but you have in this pond loads of lotuses, and they're us, yeah? So it's like an extraordinarily positive image of us, yeah? Challenging perhaps, but positive, because some of the lotuses are right down in the mud. I know what that feels like. We all know what that feels like, you know? You're kind of, there's almost darkness, but you're still a lotus, yeah? Some lotuses are near the surface, some are kind of breaking through the surface. And so this is the Buddha's vision of us, that we're just in different stages and different levels of receptivity or understanding or awareness. And so that's how he sees people, and that's why he decides to teach. So, that's the Buddha has the decision, he makes the decision to teach, and without going into it, he reflects that some of his former companions will understand. Yeah, they were a bit like him at the time before he went on his own path. They were a bit, I don't know, say misguided perhaps. They were basically doing a whole ascetic practice, which basically means torturing yourself. It was a whole idea that you would separate, quote unquote, your soul from your body by dominating your body and mastering your body. That didn't work. The Buddha nearly died, basically, before he became the Buddha. He tried all this stuff and he was like, this isn't working. Yeah, he'd done the whole hedonism thing when he was young, like went in, yeah, like more than people in Berlin probably. I don't know about that. But anyway, actually probably not. No, he definitely didn't, but he went in. He probably did it in a nice way. He probably did it in the best way possible. Yeah, anyway, he tried all that and he was like, nah, it's kind of runs empty in the end. It's like, okay, it's fine for a while, but in the end it dries up, doesn't it? It's not working. Then he tried torturing himself. I'm simplifying a bit, but he tried dominating his will, his body, you know. Anyway, he was with a number of other people at that time. They were doing the same thing. Then he began to realize this is the wrong way, started eating food. They were like, oh my God, what a lightweight. He's a total disgrace, and they left him. But he realized they were still serious. Yeah, they were still kind of going for it. So he goes to them. He thinks, okay, I'm going to teach them. I think they'll get it. Yeah. So it's interesting. So there's different accounts of that particular journey from where he is under the Bodhi tree, which some of you, well, Dhammasara was there not so long ago in India. And he goes from there to his friends. And well, it's interesting. There's, like I said, there's different accounts of who he meets first, but I'll go through both of them. Yeah, the first one is a meeting with a Brahmin, and I guess you could say Brahmin is the highest of the caste system, like a priest caste. Yeah, and well, let me just read it then. After 7 days, the Buddha came out from that stillness and went from the Bodhi tree to the goat herd's banyan tree. He too sat there cross-legged for 7 days without moving, experiencing the bliss of freedom. Then a Brahmin devoted to mystical mantras went up to the Buddha, exchanged pleasantries with him, and said, "Good Gautama," that's the Buddha's name, Gautama. "Good Gautama, how is one a Brahmin? What are the qualities that make one a Brahmin?" So he's basically asking the Buddha, what is the highest person, you might say? What is the highest? He's been born into this priest caste, into this highest caste, and he's asking the Buddha, what is the highest person? The Buddha, seeing the significance of this, the Buddha uttered a heartfelt exclamation. The Brahmin who has shut out bad qualities, who does not murmur mystical mantras, but is free from flaws and self-controlled, who has reached final knowledge and fulfilled the spiritual life, he may rightly proclaim the highest doctrine, having no pride about anything in the world. So this is really interesting. It's something that a friend of ours, Padmavajra, brings up a lot, this particular incident. It's curious how almost the first engagement of the Buddha is a kind of clash with, I guess, society at the time, yeah, which is unusual. So he immediately, and there's been lots of disputes, I guess, between the Brahmin caste and the Buddha and his teachers over the centuries. That's been something that has unfolded in various ways. But this is what the Buddha had to do. There was a whole language at the time of a spiritual language, or just a language in general, and he basically transformed those words. So he used the same words but gave them new meaning. So instead of a Brahmin, according to the Buddha, being someone who is born into the highest position, he still keeps the Brahmin as the kind of point of what is highest, but he says the Brahmin is someone of worth, not birth, essentially. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So there's an immediate engagement with the world around him. So that's the first interesting thing. Yeah, the second interesting, he's going along his way. He says, it occurred to me, these five mendicants were very helpful to me. They looked after me during my time of striving. Why don't I teach them first, yeah? So he goes along to them. So while he's walking there, he bumps into someone else, someone called Upaka, yeah? And I have to say, I think this particular story is one of the reasons I'm a Buddhist, yeah? I couldn't really tell you why, but there's something about the fact that it's been put almost at the front of the tradition that I find gives me trust somehow, yeah? So, he's going along, and then Upaka, I won't do, the Buddha's basically saying his experience, but Upaka saw him, yeah? And he says to him, "Sir, your faculties are so very clear, and your complexion is pure and bright. In whose name have you gone forth, sir? Who is your teacher? Whose teachings do you believe in?" Yeah, so he's, this was the custom of the time. Apparently it was very uncultured to not have a teacher, a spiritual teacher. Yeah, it was a kind of almost unbelievable. So he's just being very polite. He's asking who his teacher is, whose name has he gone forth. So going forth is basically, the Buddha was from a whole tradition of wanderers. People would wander, people would support them in their striving. Yeah, it was the culture. Yeah, and he's asking, what do you believe in, basically? Yeah. So the Buddha replies to him, "I am the champion, the knower of all, unsullied in the midst of all things. I've given up all, freed through the end of craving. Since I know for myself, whose follower should I be?" It's quite a statement, isn't it? He's the champion. "I have no tutor, there is no one like me. In the world with its gods, I have no rival." Yeah, so this guy's like, just asked him this. "For in the world I am the perfected one, I am the supreme teacher, I alone and fully awake, cooled, quenched. I am going to the city of Kasi," I think I pronounced it right, "to roll forth the wheel of the Dharma," to teach basically. "In this world that is so blind, I'll beat the drum of freedom from death." So he got quite an answer there, Upaka, didn't he? He was like, in other translations of this, I think he even says, he can't even figure out what the Buddha is. Are you a god, or what are you? He's like really curious, yeah? So then Upaka replies, "According to what you claim, sir, you ought to be the infinite victor." And then the Buddha says, "The victors are those like me. The victors are those like me, have reached the ending of defilements, have conquered bad qualities, Upaka. That's why I am a victor." Yeah, so Upaka's there, and he says, "If you say so, sir," and walks off. Unbelievable. It says, shaking his head, he took a wrong turn and left. I don't know why, I just find it so inspiring. Partially because it's like me, on a bad day. Partially probably because it's like most of us, yeah? We're kind of like, oh my God. And then we're like, on our phone somewhere else, like we just lost it. But also I find it encouraging that it's at the forefront of the tradition as well. Upaka doesn't get struck down by lightning, the floor doesn't open, and like he doesn't get swallowed into the reaches of hell. He's just like, all right. Some people won't get it, yeah? And that's the way it is. Although, apparently, which I found out on Thursday, apparently Upaka comes back later and does attain enlightenment. So the Buddha does teach him. Yeah. So maybe that's enough to say about that. So not everyone would we like to think we might recognize a Buddha, don't we? We like to we hold ourselves quite highly, don't we? Like, oh yeah, perhaps we wouldn't. Because there's also other stories, like when he goes to meet these three friends, the Anuruddhas. It's a bit unfair because they're not all called Anuruddha, but anyway, the three Anuruddhas. And the park keeper doesn't let him in. He's like, oh, who's this tramp? Let's get rid of... And they have to come and say, no, it's the Buddha. Yeah. So it's worth bearing that in mind. We don't really know who people are. Yeah. Especially not in spiritual circles. There's all sorts of interesting, especially on Instagram these days, there's all sorts of kind of interesting people doing their kind of mystical... Come on this course, it's only 5,000 euros and I'll transform your life in a weekend. And you're like, oh my God, it looks so cool. Maybe they are enlightened. I don't know. Anyway, maybe not. But we don't know. So the Buddha goes to his friends. He arrives at Varanasi and the deer park. Somehow that's beautiful. Yeah. So this is where Buddhism begins, in the deer park. Yeah, at Isipatana. And his friends remember Gautama, who's now the Buddha. They remember him from before, and they weren't impressed because he was doing so well. Yeah, he was like, all his hair had fallen out through starvation, his fingernails were rotten and coming out. He wasn't eating, he nearly died trying to wash in this stream. And they're like, yeah, go, go, go. And then he just took some rice pudding, essentially, and they left in disgust, yeah? So now he's coming back. They see him in the distance, and they're like, we're not going to stand for this person, yeah? We don't treat him, what do they say? We shouldn't bow to him or rise for him or receive his bowl and robe. But we can set out a seat if he likes. Yeah? So, and then it says, yet as this is the Buddha speaking, yet as I drew closer, the group of 5 mendicants were unable to stop themselves as they had agreed. Some came out to greet me and receive my bowl and robe. Some spread out a seat, while others set out water for washing my feet. But they still addressed me by my name and as Sir. So they can't help themselves. This is interesting. Again, it's the context. It's clearly the Buddha's. This happens throughout the whole of the tradition. It's the Buddha's presence. It's not just the teaching. It's his actual presence. Is their direct experience of someone who is free, which is what Buddhism is about. Yeah, that's why we do all of this. We're looking for liberation. Yeah, so their experience of meeting the Buddha is. Does something to them. It draws something out, and they can't help but be interested. Yeah, and they say to him, Reverend Gautama, that practice, that grueling work, through that grueling work, you did not achieve any superhuman distinction, knowledge, and vision worthy of the noble ones. How could you have achieved such a state now that you've become indulgent? Strayed from the struggle and returned to indulgence. So by indulgence, they mean like 1 bowl of food a day, yeah, and probably not starving yourself. So basically, he says to them, it's very nice actually. He basically says to them, "Have you ever heard me talking this way before?" Yeah, because he says he's liberated, he's free, and he can teach them. And they're being, I don't know about rude, but they're doing their thing, and he just says, have you ever heard me talk like this before? And they say, no. And then he starts engaging with them. And that's the beginning of what you would say is Buddhism. Yeah. So he teaches them, he's engaged with them over a number of days. And the way it comes down to us is quite formulaic in a way. It comes in these different teachings which have existed for 2,500 years, but one particular part of it that I wanted to focus on is what's called the Eightfold Path. Yeah, the Eightfold Path is central. It's the path, basically. Yeah, the Buddha basically said to them, which was his idea for leaving in the first place. There's suffering. Yeah, we all suffer. Yeah, and there's a reason for that suffering. Yeah. And he also says to them, but there is actually a way out of suffering, which is what a Buddha is. A Buddha doesn't suffer anymore, yeah? And there's a path, yeah? And this path is the Eightfold Path. I don't really want to talk, I'm not going to talk about the whole path in detail, it's impossible anyway, but in 20 minutes. But I just wanted to talk about one distinction, which is the first part of the Eightfold Path and the other parts, yeah? So, well, I've been in a study group recently, we've been looking at this, yeah? And our own teacher, Sangharakshita, makes a distinction with the Eightfold Path, and he says it's split into 2 parts. So the Eightfold Path, you have the path of vision, and you have the path of transformation. And you could say that's the whole of Buddhism. It always kind of works like that. There's a path of vision and there's a path of transformation. You see something, and then, if you're able to, you will transform your life in accordance with what you know to be true. That's what the Buddha's saying. Yeah. So, I'm not going to go into all the other 7 parts. I just want to talk about the first part, this path of vision, yeah, which is a translation of term samyak drishti. Yeah, so samyak can be translated as something like proper, thorough, integral, and it normally gets translated as right. Yeah, so you have samyak and you have drishti, which means like view. Yeah, it means to see, basically. It's something direct. So sometimes it gets translated as right understanding, but our own teacher, and I think it's fairly obvious, that it's not head knowledge in that sense. He makes the point, you don't sit there with a load of books and learn all about the history of Buddhism, all the different schools of Buddhism and everything like this, and then you do the rest of the stages. He makes the point, drishti is a view. It's as in something direct and immediate. It's to do with sight. Yeah, it's like as if now you're looking, well, I guess at me, and like around, I'm looking, it's something direct. I don't have to think about this, it's an experience, yeah? And samyak is like, well, like I say, could be right, but he prefers the word perfect. None of these words are particularly satisfactory. But the whole path, in a sense, begins with this, perfect vision. Yeah, you see something directly for yourself. Undeniably, yeah, in that moment it's undeniable. And you transform the rest of your life on that basis. So we'll have all experienced these moments in our life, yeah? And I think that's probably in a way why sometimes Buddhism gets called a natural religion. We're not asked immediately to place ourselves within a myth or into a whole story, in a sense, which may be beautiful, but that we have to adapt to. It's more talking to our direct experience as it's lived now, and then taking it to the next step. Yeah? So all of us will have experienced a glimpse of perfect vision somehow. Yeah, it could be in Sangharakshita. He makes all kinds of examples. It could be from something deeply painful, like the loss of a loved one, or maybe your career all of a sudden just looks empty. You're just like, wow, I'm 50 years old. I'm nearly 50 anyway, but you spent a long time doing this thing, and what's it for? Yeah, maybe someone of your friends died and you're there with like, okay, maybe you made some money, but blah, blah, blah. What's this for? It could be that. It could be a visionary experience. It could be you just see something clearly. You just see something somehow. You have a moment of beauty. It could be to do with nature. It could be to do with the way someone behaves. And your whole being is elevated. Yeah, something opens. I'm sure everyone's experienced this. You know, I mean, some people have had those kind of experience on psychoactive substances. I don't want to read too much into that because then the rest of the path sometimes falls away and you end up staying with the psychoactive substances as if that is the path. It can be, it could be part of the path. It can certainly open things and you can see things. Things that you wouldn't normally see. Like our day-to-day bandwidth, I might be wrong, but it's almost like we're being squashed more by our technology. Our bandwidth seems to be shrinking somehow, at least in my experience. Yeah, we're all kind of speeding up on some treadmill. And then all of a sudden the bandwidth opens and you're like, you can breathe again. And you're like, there's actually a much bigger picture. Yeah. So that's perfect vision. A glimpse of it. You've seen something. It could be in a dream even, he says. Yeah. You could have a dream, a certain dream that just stays with you and can change your life. It's not something you forget. So, well, by way of example, I just thought I'd give a few examples from my own life. Just because it can be helpful, I find sometimes to hear someone else's, and then you think, what's happened to me in a way, and what's been my experience? Yeah. The first one, I thought, was that a glimpse of perfect vision? Maybe it was. But I was on my bed when I was about 14, listening to jungle music, which I love anyway, and I had all these strange visions, like all these kind of like it was like an elevator. I was pretty stoned as well, but anyway, I had all these kind of elevated visions of a different world, like a different dimension of reality. The weed wasn't that strong. There was something else going on, and it rose me up. And I would say it changed my life because I followed that music. I just wanted to add that because I didn't want to do injustice to it. Because I thought, no, that was something. That really did something. It opened me up. It moved me in a certain way. It lifted me out of all the things going on around me at the time and the world, and offered a glimpse of something. Yeah, that was the first one. The second one I thought, funny enough, was related. I was in a jungle rave when I was in my early 20s, and I was really into this music, and all my friends were, and that was the life. And It was everything. And I had such a strange experience all of a sudden of like being there and just having, I was with friends and whatnot, but I was zoned out a bit. I wasn't on drugs at all. And then I just had a sort of vision of myself being like 80 years old in the same sort of club with the same friends, dressed in Adidas three-stripe tracksuits with walking sticks and like white hair. And I was just like, I felt sick. I was like, this cannot be me, you know, in terms of a cycle of like me doing the same thing, getting more painful. And also this, and I thought it related to insubstantiality as well. It felt so real at the time, and then you think, oh wow, this being cool, me being like a cool kid, is going to disappear quickly. And then what? I'm going to be pretty uncool or something, you know. So there was impermanence, and also it just didn't feel tangible anymore. And weirdly enough, I would say that moment was definitely part of moving towards Buddhism, because I went to the Buddhist center very close after that. So something gave way, yeah? There was some kind of indication of the life I'm living now. I'm so into this is me, but it's going to look very different in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, yeah? I can't rely on it in a sense. So that was one. Yeah, the other one was actually a dream. It was, and I was. It's funny because I had a bit of a spiritual crisis a couple of years ago, where I thought, have I actually experienced anything that I've been involved in, like Buddhism for 20 years? Have I actually experienced anything that correlates to what you might call transcendental states or higher states of consciousness, that I could concretely say I have, yeah? And I thought, no, I have, because it was a dream. And it's also important, our own teacher makes the point, when you have these visions or you have these experiences, you need to take them seriously. You need to kind of cherish them, maybe even make a shrine to them in your mind, because you forget them, he says. And it's true, isn't it? You have some kind of elevated state, clear vision, you know exactly what it is. The next week, it's like it never happened. And then it's a memory, like a year later, you're like, oh, was that real? It was real, but it's kind of still in you, but not that conscious. So I just reflect, anyway, this dream, those of you who know me know this dream, sorry, it's the same dream, hasn't changed. Anyway, this dream, when I was in my 20s, I would say, I think it was just after I got into Buddhism. So in this dream, I was in this, what was it, like a cafe, in the south of England, a place called Bournemouth, or somewhere like that, I don't know. It was in the south of England, and there was like these old ladies with like a purple hair, like they used to have. I don't think they have anymore, but you know, it is quite, I really like it now. In Berlin, you know, blue rinse or purple rinse, and it's great. And they were serving tea and stuff, and scones, like little cakes. And so they were there. And then on this big table, there was Tony Soprano. You know Tony Soprano? The Sopranos? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. I just thought I'd missed a generation. But anyway, Tony Soprano is from the early 2000s, The Sopranos. And he was there with all his friends, all these mobsters, yeah? It's like there's a mobster series, yeah? So they were all there. And I sat down with them, and we were having, it's a bit too much detail. Anyway, we were having, what are they called? Prawn cocktails. You know? Doesn't matter. Anyway, so we were there, and I suddenly became lucid. You know when you wake up in your dream? Have you ever had that? Yeah. Yeah? Where you're dreaming, and then all of a sudden you know you're dreaming. And you're like, interesting. What is this? So I looked around, and I just thought, oh, this is obviously just like the thoughts of the day. I was watching Sopranos heavily at the time. I think I'd been on holiday like a few years before with my dad to this place. Yeah, so I was just like, all right. But the light bulbs, you know, well, it was kind of coming from the light bulbs, but it was coming from everywhere. There was a light, yeah, which was like a white light, yeah, like a pearly white light, really bright, but not harsh at all, yeah. The light also seemed to have a personality. It was love. Yeah, I just felt so relaxed. I just sat in this chair like, oh God, yeah. It was like love, and it was intelligent. Yeah, it was like a super intelligence or something. These light bulbs, not light bulbs, but the light coming through these light bulbs. So the context was just the detritus, the regular whatever nonsense of my mind or stuff. But the light was, I don't even know how we describe these things, because you can't really make these definitions, but it felt like it wasn't me. Yeah, it almost felt like something was reaching out. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah. So. God. Anyway. Yeah. So that happened, and yeah. So there you go. So that was an experience, which is for me has been worth remembering, because you can doubt yourself sometimes, especially when you're practicing Buddhism, because you can have dry periods, you can have periods for years where you're just doing your duty, so to speak, or you're involved with things and you're kind of not quite sure why you're doing it anymore. And maybe you're not even enjoying it. But then you have to remember, or I think I've had to remember, that I chose to do this because it relates to something. It's not random, it's not just because it's fun. It's like, it actually relates to a glimpse of something, yeah? So the Buddha's basically saying, you have these moments of perfect vision, you have a glimpse of something, and you need to act on them before time runs out, yeah? You need to act on them. And it may be quite confrontational. It might change, it might mean turning your life upside down. Or not, a bit, probably both. So you have this vision, but the Buddha doesn't leave it there. He doesn't just say, it's not just a big mystical experience and then you just leave it there, yeah? The whole point of Buddhism is there's a path, yeah? There's pragmatic things you need to do in order to, as our own teacher says, bring yourself up to that level, to bring yourself, to move yourself towards that highest point in your experience, yeah? So I'm just going to run through them quickly. I'm not going to say much about them, but just to give you a sense, because in a way, I think if we talk about this, we get perhaps a clearer sense of what a Buddha is, because a Buddha is an individual who's transformed conclusively all these different aspects of life, yeah? So sometimes you get a sense of the Buddha through ritual, don't you? You have these you have mantras, or you have offerings, and you have, it's non-cognitive and it's direct, and it's a kind of, you might even call it a mystical experience. You have a sense of something, yeah, beyond your current experience. But sometimes it's, there's work to be done. Well, there's definitely work to be done. They're both true. So you have this perfect vision, yeah. Then you have perfect emotion. Yeah, so you're basically immediately stepping into the driving seat of your life, which is your emotions. Your emotions dictate everything. We're very irrational creatures, as we all know. We like to pretend we're very rational these days, but we're not. It's quite clear. You just have to look at the state of the world and maybe even one's own mind to realize that we're not very rational. So the first thing is we step into our emotions and cultivate positive emotions. Yeah, we cultivate what is good. With a determination. So, yeah, that's something like what we did today, the Metta Bhavana. You're directly engaging with your emotional life off the bat, yeah? You just jump in. It's like, Buddhism would say you can't leave that to random. You can't leave your emotional life up for grabs, you know? It's you have to kick into it and do stuff with it and engage with it. Maybe it's also to do with knowing yourself as well, knowing what's going on, yeah, because your emotions are actually driving you to make your decisions, and all your moves, all your big moves in life, there's a thin layer of rationality to it, but it'll generally be your emotions. There'll be some intuition even, maybe perfect vision, maybe not, but there'll be some intuition driving you, and your emotions are your kind of engine, aren't they? They're your powerhouse. So you have perfect vision, then you have to engage with your emotions. Then comes perfect speech, yeah? We have to get on top of our speech. It's basically truthful speech, kind speech, helpful speech, harmonious speech, yeah? That's what we need to engage with. And for most Buddhists, this is our working ground, speaking personally. It's almost like a battleground, perfect speech. It just jumps out your mouth. Before you've had a chance to get on top of what you even think, it's already out of your mouth. It's making ripples over here. You're like, oh God, you're trying to drag it back, but it's gone. Then there's a whole load of consequences. Then you get seen in a certain way, so then you have to come with, it's hard work, isn't it? So the Buddha didn't mess about. He's saying you need to deal with speech as well, transform that. Perfect speech, hard work. So we have emotion, speech, perfect action. I guess it's in the realm of karma, yeah? Karma means action. Yeah, you can shape your whole life. That's the Buddha's main point. The main point is you're not fixed beings. You're not... this whole business of not having a soul in Buddhism, I think maybe poetically we have a soul. There's something in us that's definitely us. You know, you can feel it, your heart. Buddhism's not really saying that. There's something particular about us and deep and amazing. But we're movable, we're changeable, we're like clouds, to use the cliche, but we change. And so perfect action is Buddha's basically saying you can change yourself by changing your actions. Yeah, it's the key point in Buddhism. Yeah? Everything's changing. You need to know that concretely. Even though we behave as if we're solid and everyone else is solid and the world is solid and we fight each other about all this, like we do all the time, the Buddha's saying, duh, we're not. We're actually in process all the time, understand that and act in a certain way that will deliver certain fruits. Yeah? Then there's perfect effort. I'm not going to say too much about that, but we need to make an effort, don't we, to cultivate the good and to deal with the mind, deal with the bad, deal with our kind of evil side, you might say, and encourage and take care of what's good in us. It's the most precious thing we've got, is our heart, really, yeah? And we need to make an effort with that. Again, leaving it to chance, to me these days, seems like insanity. It seems like absolute madness to just leave your heart and mind without actively taking it as the most central thing in your life, because it is your life. There's nothing else, it's your life. So not engaging with it and just... It's nice to go to the gym. I've started going again. I don't feel so decrepit, and terrible. It's nice to go to the gym. But we're obsessed with our bodies, and our health and... I was almost going to swear, sorry. But our kind of green smoothies and optimizing ourselves. But what about our mind and our heart? Surely that has to be the central issue, yeah? So we have to make effort in that, yeah? It's all this great to career, ladders, money, fantastic, but the main event, yeah? Perfect awareness, maybe you could say it's to do with meditation. You're just... Well, it's awareness. You're not forgetting what you're doing. Yeah, that's a very important thing in Buddhism. That's why we have Buddhism. If we forgot what we were doing, if we didn't forget what we were doing, we wouldn't need Buddhism. You'd have perfect vision, and then you'd be like, boom, everything would be in place. You'd know what you're doing in every moment. You'd be kind to everyone. You'd be an amazing. You know what I mean? But we need to be more aware. We need to remember for a start, yeah? Which is why you have a tradition. It's why we meet every Saturday or every day, some of us. We meet because we need to remind ourselves what's important and act from that, yeah? So there's that. And perfect samadhi, I'm not going to say anything about that today. That's maybe along the lines of the Buddha. Awakening, yeah, whatever, I'm not, you can deal with that yourself. Yeah, so I'm not going to say anything about enlightenment, but you can understand, can't you, if you look at that path that's been laid out, that's basically the Buddha's what you might call spiritual genius, to use that word. He's trying to communicate something incommunicatable, so you can't actually tell someone what a Buddha is, obviously, because you have to know it yourself. So how do you know it? You know it by getting there yourself. And so the Buddha's laying this thing out, as a way for us to move towards our own liberation and our own freedom from suffering. Yeah. So if you can just imagine for a second transforming all those areas of your life conclusively, yeah, not like you're working on them anymore, not like, oh, I need to be more this, or I need to make more effort or less effort, or I need to be more kind. None of this. It's all been well, they call him the conqueror, the jinnah. It's all been conquered, yeah? Weird language, maybe. Maybe not, yeah? If you can imagine that, then maybe you get some sense of what a Buddha might be. And the reason Buddhists, the reason we worship a Buddha. The Buddha's not a god, yeah, but he's not just an ordinary human being. It's almost like a special leap. And you have those little moments in your own experience when you clock that in your own life, so there's something much bigger. And if you can imagine being in that much bigger at every moment, ad infinitum, or however you say it, then maybe there's something you're moving towards what a Buddha might be. Yeah. So come next Sunday to Buddha Day. Good.